Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our Winter Speaker Series. Today we will have Senator Bert Stedman, but he is currently on the floor in Juneau, and so we are just going to be on hold with him for just a few minutes while he gets back out into his office so he can join us. I want to give a couple updates, and I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you some updates from the chamber. So our President's Circle, I want to thank Search for being a President's Circle member, and they've for several years have been a member at this level and are really part of making our membership and all of our programs really successful. I want to highlight our primary benefactors. These businesses pay more for their membership and also, invest in our program throughout the year. So we want to thank them for sure. The other thing that's really exciting and that's coming out is the Silver Saver. So our 2021 Silver Saver is coming out hot off the presses tomorrow. We have the April 1st is our date. We have Alaska Pure Sea Salt, the Backdoor Cafe, the Bayview Pub, Silver Basin, Spenard Builder Supply, and The Cellar returning advertisers. And new on the 2021 card, you'll see AC Lakeside, Mangiare Italian Restaurant, Pizza Express, Sitka Fishing Excursions, and Subway. So we're super excited to be able to do this. This is a preview of the cover, and the printer's been running, and we'll be getting those out. If you haven't purchased a Silver Saver before, the Silver Saver it's $20, and it's a whole entire year that we give special discounts. The discounts vary from a percentage off for a purchase or a specific savings on an item. So we're really excited to be able to be doing this. I think it's our 14th or 15th year, and just really thankful for all the advertisers that are part of that. The chamber doesn't actually sell these cards to individuals, and so if you're interested in getting your new card, you can go to one of these advertiser locations. They sell the cards. They're, like I said, $20. The other cool thing that we do with the Silver Savers is that we include them in the welcome bags to the Coast Guard families that are moving here. And so it's another way we put together a really nice card, and it goes in a Visit Sitka bag that we provide, and it's just a really nice part of the welcome to the Coast Guard families that are moving here. The other thing I wanted to update everyone, if you haven't seen it, the Go Big, Go Alaska campaign with Alaska Airlines, the Sitka Chamber, and Visit Sitka are partnering to be able to share this message, the 21% discount for regular coach seats. So definitely share out with all of your friends and family. Get them booking their trips that they've been talking about over these years. It's time to book now, and so we're really excited about that. There's lots of really great fares out there, and then top that with your 21% off. And I believe there's also a percentage, is it 13% off in first class fares. So that's also kind of unheard of. But they are they're doing this, so definitely I think it goes till Sunday, so don't let anybody wait. They need to book their tickets now. You can go to the Chamber's Facebook page and share this image, or you can find also on Visit Sitka's social media pages, you'll see those promotions with our local photo added, which is really fun. There's all across the state where we've been able to use local images, which is great. Other things that you can find on our Facebook page are the past presentations, and if you're interested or missed one of them, last week's panel covered a lot of topics with outdoor recreation. We've had a really fun winter speaker series that really covers a lot of topics, and we're putting together our spring speaker series now. We're into spring, and we will be taking a couple weeks off, resuming. Let's see, I think I have the date is April 21st will be our first spring speaker series session, and so we'll make sure to check your emails for that. Keep us on the calendar, and take a little bit of time to do some professional development next Wednesday if you've got us on your calendar. I see lots of folks are joining us on the Zoom group, as well as we've got some folks watching on Facebook, so thanks for being here and joining us. I want to turn over the presentation to Laurie, who is the director of Visit Sitka, and she is going to give an update on what's happening with Visit Sitka and the meetings and conventions, which is really exciting. Actually, are you going to bow your hat? Because I see Senator Bert Stedman on the line. I love your red chair too. That's awesome.
I'm just trying to get you set up here so we can roll on it.
Okay, well, you take that minute. I'm going to just do a little bit of an introduction for you. The senator is the Southeast Alaska District R Republican Senator Stedman, is known for his expertise on energy taxation, public finance, and state budgeting issues. He served as co-chair of the Senate Finance Committee of 2007 to 2012. During this time, as the initial co-chair, billions of dollars were deposited into the state savings accounts. Senator Stedman is a past member of the Energy Council. The Energy Council is an organization of 13 energy producing states and 2 Canadian provinces. Lots more to say about what you've done, but I know most recently we were able to have you join us over here at our annual banquet here in Sitka and be able to have you present our new business of the year to Alaska Seaplanes. So we really thank you for being part of that surprise. We were also able to honor you with a Cossack Cap award. So thank you for all of your work. There's some really awesome projects that are underway, and I think a lot of encouraging things here in Sitka that are based in the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And I don't want to waste any more time talking, but I do want to say that we do have the question and answer set up. So if you have a question for the senator, please post those comments there in the Q&A, and I'll help get those sent over to him. So go ahead.
Okay, Rachel, how much time do you want me to go on overall state stuff, and how much time do you want me to read for questions?
Sure, if you want to just kind of do about a half hour, and then we can come back for some questions. I'm sure that some folks will have them come over.
Okay, no, that sounds fine.
Okay, thank you.
Things may or may not be quite a half hour, but it's a lot nicer when we actually have presentations, so we have someone talk about numerics that you can't see. But back up a little bit before we get into the COVID issue that we're working with and the different buckets of money coming from the feds. I'll talk a little bit about the overall budget. So as we all understand, we've been running at deficit spending for quite some time, and we've spent down our savings accounts precipitously, well over 10 billion. We've got about $1 billion left in our main savings account for constitutional. And the governor submitted a budget in December 15th that's balanced, that's required by the Constitution. But some of the sources of revenue used to fulfill this constitutional obligation, we're not going to accept in the legislation. We're going to use standard general funds for most of it. And that process, we basically unwind his submitted budget because he's required to do a balanced budget. But when we actually unwrap the budget, we're a couple hundred million, 250 million underwater. Plus, he used an additional $3 billion extra out of the permanent fund earnings reserve So he took all of the standard 5% draw out of the permanent fund, two state operations, and another $3 billion, extra $3 billion to a dividend, which would be the statutory dividend, which would roughly equate to about $3,000 per person. That is very likely not to be the dividend, extremely unlikely. And the reason it is if we were to do something like that, twofold, we would have a substantial budget deficit and we'd be eroding the permanent fund, and some of us are very concerned that we erode the permanent fund earnings reserve portion, the spendable portion of the permanent fund. We have nowhere else to go when that money is gone, and we'd still have a deficit of somewhere around $2 billion plus or minus $100 million. So we're going to first at the finance table clean up his budget submission. We're not going to look at it like he has to as a balanced budget. We're going to look at it as what's our reoccurring revenue, what's our expenditures that we have to meet, and how big's the hole. And that pretty much, easiest way to think about that is if you don't have a dividend or a very small dividend, we pretty much have reoccurring cash flow. So when we look back at the budget, main budget portion, and we go back to say 2018, that was the end of the budget reductions mainly. From 2018 through the proposed 22 budget, which starts in July, the expenditures all in, when we take into account debt service and retirement payments, is down about negative $62 million, or 1.4%. And that's out of about $3,900 million. $3,900 million. We've reduced it all told $60 million. So the $60 million that came out of the University of Alaska, those funds were basically, you could call them reallocated, or just by happenstance, a $60 million increase in corrections budget of prisons since 2018. The reductions in the Marine Highway were not reflected in the final numbers of Department of Transportation. They were also consumed. So some of these big reductions that we've had have been offset by increases, and we're trying to deal with some of that stuff. So all told, we don't have the ability to move the operating budget down much without statutory changes. So we try and have those conversations and those are a lot more difficult. That would include that time frame on the budget that we're reviewing and covers 2 different governors and 3 different legislatures. So one can't say it was a conservative governor that did the expense reductions and couldn't, or more moderate than the previous governor that could or couldn't, or the last 3 legislatures. Put them all together and tread them on. So what we're looking at doing then is taking all of the one-time source funds out and looking at it just reoccurring revenue. And then we're going to have a conversation on the dividend amount, and it's going to range somewhere probably between $500 and $2,000, in my guess. There's nobody at 0, and there's very few people at 3,000 because you can't go against me. We'll have those discussions, and then we're going to add back the COVID money, the money that's come in several different buckets. When we do that, the final budget will look like we don't have any budgetary problems at all. We'll just make it disappear from the 35,000 foot level. So the budget that's going to roll out on the finance table will not have that stuff in it at first. The first cut of the budget will actually make it very clear to the public and other members what we're dealing with, and then we will add in the dividend, and we will add in the COVID money. And it'll look like that doesn't happen. And we could get away with that for about a year or two, and then we're going to have a bigger cliff to fall off. And that's what we want to do. So as we all know, the federal government has put in a huge stimulus amount in all across the country. To give you an example, the schools in Alaska are going to receive roughly about $359 million over a couple of different buckets. So it's a significant amount of money, and we're still working with the Department of Ed how to structure a lot of that. We want to make sure it's spread out over a few years, 2-3 years, and we'll package that up. We're looking at expanding the ability of the school districts to carry forward money, sizable sums of money. As an example, in the CARES Act, there's $38 million for schools, K-12, not university. The CRIS Act, $160 million, and then the American Rescue Plan is $350 million. And that doesn't include the stimulus package that's out today, that the president's talking about, or the next one that's coming. So we have today, the finance table, we have the professor of economics from the university, in charge of ICER, which is the analytical one, talk about the economy of the state and where we're at. And he had some really interesting observations. We have had obviously decrease in GDP in the state, but we've had an increase in personal income. And that's pretty much seen across the country. So the funds that are coming out of Washington, I'm not talking about how we're going to pay for it, but those funds coming into all the American families and the families in Alaska have held the household income up. In fact, it's increased across the state. And the GDP has declined, population's declined, some other negative issues. So it's not anything like a normal recession, normal business cycle. We live in this pandemic. A little different animal. He was basically telling the finance committee this morning that we can expect kind of a slow turnaround to get out of this in general. And he had some of the regions of the state broken down. Southeast, because obviously we're more concerned. We've been hit the hardest of any region in the state. As we all know, we've lost our large cruise ship from last summer and most likely this summer. And that's had significant impacts. And we've had a crummy fishing season this year. So we've been hit really hard. And then some of these stimulus funds that are sitting at the table right now in the American Recovery Act, there's $1 billion, $1.19 billion, that has a lot of flexibility in the appropriations. So we're going to look at how we're going to structure that. And we're working with the governor's office, and the Office of Management and Budget, on what how we're going to package this up. There's also another $112 million for capital projects, and then local relief, $230 million. So under local relief, clearly our region needs more local relief than some of the other regions in the state that arguably it's supposed to, or it's had the most impact on us, in fact. So we're going to try to come up with some help in that regard. There's help that's needed at the local level, communities, city hall, and there's help that's needed within the business environment in our companies, payroll protection issues, and just general, evaporation of the ability to function as a going concern when most are not, or the holiday market disappears. So we're going to have to work that out throughout numerous meetings and discussions here in Juneau. The American Recovery Act, the last one, that was just out a few weeks ago, has all kinds of monies in it, other than the funds I've mentioned, but they're already targeted. As an example, there's a bunch of monies for Health and Human Services, Department of Transportation, Homeland Security, and even some agriculture and some other things. So you'll see the legislative discussion on areas that we can actually afford. And the funds that are basically siloed by the federal government would be being flowed. But a lot of the nonprofits around the state dealing with social issues, I think, would be a wash of money. And we won't have a lot of control of any of that from the legislative side at all. So we're going to work through these different COVID packages coming out of Washington. I mentioned there's already 3 and 6 subcomponents within them. And then there's the one that was announced today and another one coming. I expect those 2 total will probably be another couple of $1 billion in the state. So we're trying to look at infrastructure projects that would have generational impacts, not just fill up the pothole and go from there, but something, projects of significance, benefit the state and jobs. So that's kind of the high-level rundown on the operating budget and how it's intertied with the COVID relief. If it sounds confusing and the dollars are huge, and it's very confusing, and the numbers are very big, and they're coming at us very fast. But we have a good working relationship with the governor and the governor's financial team, and we are working collectively across party lines and across legislative jurisdictions to come up with a plan for these funds. And I think that'll take place without a lot of fanfare within the political environment or a big food fight. It will go fairly smooth. Back up a little bit and mention too that we, within the comments at the beginning of the meeting of the structural deficit issue, we are talking about and trying to work through a rewrite of the dividend program. And we are looking at something similar to like the Sitka terminal fund, where you have everything rolled into the corpus and you pay out a particular percentage a year. I think the 5% payout is too high, and that's been referenced by Callan Associates with the consultant permanent fund. And some of us will be arguing for 4.5% payout per year, and then we'll have to have a policy discussion on how we can split that between the dividend and essential state services. We're dealing with public safety, or we're dealing with education, or we're dealing with things that are constitutionally mandated. There will be talk about other tax structures that we put in place. I don't see anything of significance getting through the legislature this year on that subject. And that would include oil taxes, income tax, sales tax, significant taxes. Those discussions need to take place, but we have sizable workload dealing with these stimulus funds coming out of all the different CARES Acts, and frankly, there's not enough time on the calendar to deal with it. So we have to prioritize. I, for one, looking forward to having some of these other issues on the table so that we can sort them out. Our region of the state is a little less comfortable with sales tax. The rail belt likes the sales tax. We'll probably see maybe a few sparks fly around the building over the next couple of months on that issue, or clearly next winter. And we'll see how that goes. As far as Infrastructure around our community, we're in pretty good shape. Search is going ahead with the construction of the new hospital. That's getting closer and closer to a big groundbreaking. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be a game changer in our community, not too dissimilar to the boat It's significant. We're trying to look over the CARES Act monies to see if there's any way that we can help with the facilities of that project, and that would include electrical upgrades that may be needed, water sewer upgrades, what have you. It doesn't go unnoticed like on Edgecombe, this old World War II development, and a lot of infrastructure that was upgraded since then for the current services needed at the open town or the search is going to be doing. So we're going to be working with the city on that and search and see if we can help. We're going to have a discussion on the Marine Highway. And I think that's going to be a very robust one mixed in with all this. We're working on a financial stabilization plan, again with some of the help from CARES Act money, to stabilize the Marine Highway finances and put them in a position, as recommended by the report from Bert that will come in the fall, that they have the ability to plan forward for their not only their maintenance, but their communities, all the communities that are going to get serviced, so everybody can have an idea several months out what kind of schedule they're in. Their scheduling not only is challenging, frankly spoke, and as far as passenger traffic, but it's also broken for repairs in the shipyard and other things. So they become more erratic in their ability to maintain their mechanical ability, and it puts the shipyard in a tough spot because they have to be ready to service them whenever. We need to have the ferries better maintained. We need to have a better planning schedule for their routine maintenance, to free up time for the shipyard to do other projects and enhance their business also. Trying to stay home to ship. So it's all in there. So you're going to see a multi-long discussion on the Marine Highway. We can hopefully get a financial stabilization plan across the finish line in the next couple of months. It'll be great. And if the public will be pleasantly surprised when we put the stuff on the table, at least us from the coast. Some of the ones that want Marine Highway to go away might not be as happy, but that's the way it goes. So we are going to be laying that out. I think that's a couple of the major things that are facing the community. Obviously the transportation and then the search build out and then the overall budget. So I think we're in fairly good shape infrastructure wise. We do have some challenges. Good things could be a lot worse. But if we can get our cruise industry back online, which is going to take probably a couple of years, that'll help us a lot revenue-wise. So anytime we can expand our tax base, example of the search expansion, we can get our tax base broader, that'll help the overall cost across the community, not only in property tax, but also in our electrical load. We need to get our electrical load out. So we need that hospital plugged into the lake and sucking as much juice out of that bad boy as we can. So we can all have a little better electrical rates. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and just kind of open it up for questions and take it wherever the members want to go and touch on whatever subjects in the question.
Great. Thank you for the broad update, and you have a full docket of work over there for sure. I have had a couple questions come in and one comment. This is from Dan Jones, and he says, so pleased to see last night's daily Sitka Sentinel that the Sterling Highway will see the $375 million upgrade this summer. Please let your fellow senators in South Central know how happy we are to get the folks on the Kenai Peninsula.
So let me touch on that.
Yes.
Clearly there's roads need to be built. And not only do we need them, but main demand for roads is in the rail belt, particularly in Matsu area, Sterling Highway. Those are the big areas. Fairbanks got more roads than they know what to do with. So we need to bring highway. So you'll see a lot of road money going into Matsu area and, for example, south of here on the Sterling Highway. That project's been in the skip for somewhere around 40 years. 40 years, not 4. And it's, it's in the neighborhood of $500 million. And it's a multi-year project. So I wish them luck. We need that highway upgraded, and we remind them that we also need to move ferry. We are trying to get the Tuscaloosa replaced. The DOT is setting aside several $1 million a year of federal money to go in advanced construction to build up the pile of federal money. It's about $250 million, maybe $300 million. It's costing what we want to replace that ferry. So it'll take them 3-4 years to add in the little sinking fund. Otherwise, it all comes out in 1 year. And if you take $250 million out of say a $600 million annual allocation from the feds to the state, it makes the ability of coastal elected officials very, very difficult to take half the state money for 10% of the population, 15% of the population. So we need to incrementally build that up. And we're also in discussions about adding crew quarters to the new Alaska class ferry so we can get them off the dock, the inland canal, and try to get some better marine highway service. So you'll see that discussion in the budget documents coming out of the House and the Senate. And it just depends on how things go between the two bodies and the governors what ends up in the final budget. But it doesn't go unnoticed that the Tuscaloosa needs to be replaced and then lots of class ferries need to be off the dock.
So another question that comes in is the ARP or this incoming infrastructure package to restructure and set up, is there going to be any funds, stimulus funds used to do that for the Alaska Marine Highway?
That's the America Rescue Plan. There might be we are looking at some COVID money to help the Marine Highway. We're still working out those details. So short answer to that is yes, but it might cross over this couple of packages. But short answer is yes. That $1 billion that's in the American Recovery Plan, $1 billion, $20 million. That's part of the money we're trying to sort through what we're going to do with it. We're looking at breaking it up over 2 or 3 years, at least 2 years. So we don't want to waste it, type of thing. And then there's the local relief of $230 million in capital projects for 112. But that $112 million for capital projects, we're still going to sort out which can be used for match money, 90-10, the feds, or what have you.
So there's a couple other questions around the use of the funds, and is there a time frame? I know last year's CARES money and different COVID relief funds had time frames where we had to spend down the money. Are these also carrying those time frames? And
It's
then,
incurred by December 31st of 2024.
okay.
But, again, we take a look at those different buckets, different time frames. Some of them is 24, some 23. The federal government, it'd be interesting to see how they change those across the country, those target dates, and how much money is actually not used to pull back. So we're trying feds to be reallocated back off to other areas and we can use more. So we're taking a look at some of the options also. We want to make sure that we have the proper structure.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government's also going to audit all 50 states on this money. We're in the first batch of states to get audited. And that's something we're not to get too worried about. And it's actually, there's an advantage to be first in the audit arena because the time frame will still be open when we have a lot of the audit work done. And it'll give us time to back up and make any corrections if there's a misunderstanding or misappropriation, if you have a disagreement or whatever. So don't get too worried about when you hear about the federal audits and all this money, other than if you're getting it for follow the rules. Because these boys from Washington are accountable in the state and going through the books.
Okay. So a little bit deeper dive, our last chamber panel focused on the potential of outdoor recreation economy. And what plans does the legislature have to invest in recreation infrastructure this year?
Not much.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. I think we're more concerned about the economy, getting the economy back on track, and getting our cruise ships back. We have some oil and gas issues up north, so not much. We have a lot of deferred maintenance around the state, small capital budgets the last several years. There'll be a lot of discussion in the capital budget on deferred maintenance. That will include schools and state buildings, roads, bridges, all that stuff. And there probably will be some trail money, but it's not very high on the priority list when you start looking at some of the relative.
Is there any money earmarked specifically for tourism? As we know, that's a big factor for our southeast communities.
Well, a tourism issue, the big factor is cruise ships.
Yeah.
So we haven't got that far yet to zero in on general fund appropriation in that area. We spend most of our time dealing with federal broad infrastructure discussions. It does not go unnoticed substantial economic negative impact that the cruise industry is right into the state, southeast in particular, and now the world. So, those things are wrapped up in COVID and the Jones Act. So they're kind of out of our control. But we want to make sure that we have as much infrastructure intact coming out the other side as absolutely possible. And marketing, let me just add on the marketing side, there's a push this year to bring in more independent travelers because of the cruise ships. So Alaska Airlines is trying to facilitate with that with extra flights also. So that, we've even talked about how can we engage the Marine Highway and get more independent travel from the Marine Highway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's lots of opportunity around if we had a system that was able to move people around Southeast Alaska, kind of as we were able to in the past. I think businesses are ready and looking at developing tour products, and we've actually had requests from, as a region, tourism destination marketers and businesses to develop those kind of packages where people can come into a Southeast port and then move around in different communities in a more independent traveler style. And so, yes, when Sitka is partnering with the Alaska Airlines promotion through Visit Sitka and the Chamber as well. So that's great, and we're sharing those messages out. And I think, marketing and getting those folks to be thinking about Alaska and thinking about coming to the Southeast will just create those greater relationships, I think, with this being their travel destination. Kind of along those lines, is there any thought to, well, I guess maybe we've already kind of covered that, just looking at funds specifically for directly impacted the loss of the two ship seasons. So is there like specific relief that's looking at how do we help these small business owners? I think, Sitka is a really great example of that, is that most of our businesses in our downtown is all locally owned and small businesses. And so how could we, or what are we looking for in terms of advocating for federal relief funds to come in for them specifically?
I think to kind of let's parse it into two sections. One's relief for City Hall, and another one's relief for businesses, payroll protection program. So we're looking at that, trying to figure that out. Quite frankly, we haven't quite got that far, with the American Rescue. Fresh on the table. The impacts are not equally distributed around the state at all and across industries. And like I mentioned earlier, household income is up. Well, GDP is down, and there's a presentation, like I mentioned earlier, with the finance committee today, and we're interested in that type of view is to take a look at the on the web and at the finance committee this morning, Senate Finance, and listen to the two economists. We have a lot of recognition within the building here that we've been hit hard in the Southeast and the Denali Borough because of the cruise ships. Now that's part of the solution. You get your colleagues to recognize you have impact. It's another challenge to get them to support cutting funds loose to the impacted area. So we're going to have those discussions. We'd have to set up a program for the business relief. It wouldn't be a list of people, I'm just getting an appropriation finance it. Some of these monies that are coming in the American Recovery Act, people will have to apply to the feds for it, the program. So that's going to take time to structure and set up. We'll do what we can do.
Great. Makes me think about, so we have this gap in employment and all of this employment going down, and for Sitka, we're expecting over 400,000 cruise passengers next season in May of 2022. And so one of the conversations we're having with the chamber board and members is about workforce development and how we prepare our businesses and our workers to be able to be ready for those increases. And also I think there's just such a shortage of folks right now. We're ramping up for a smaller independent season, but even still it's difficult. One thing that I am grateful for is that, looking at having UAS be as a separate, being incorporated into UAF is kind of off the table now. But do you have thoughts about like workforce development and how there might be support for that increased ability to bring engaged educated workers into the workforce and support them?
Well, we are having some preliminary talks on workforce development. Also up north, some of the training to that. Southeast, one of the concerns we have is you lose your employee base. So cruise ships come back, 400,000 people in Sitka say, what are they going to do? You have to have something to do, and you have to have enough employees to facilitate the businesses. Catch can They'll probably end up with 1.2 million or something in Juneau. But clearly, there's challenges in Sitka. That volume of folks, we've got to have tours, we've got to have things to do. Hoon is fairly similar. So there's definitely going to be an impact if the ramp up is extremely fast in the industry. If it takes them a while to get the ships up and running in more than a year, that'll give us some time. But from what the industry's telling me, there's a lot of pent-up demand. And what the economists are telling me, there's a lot of cash available for people to take cruises and other things. So I would expect once the ships start coming, unless we have some COVID issue that goes in monkey wrench and everything, they need to come back fairly fast and furious.
So that another I think opportunity for Southeast Alaska is in mariculture, and I was glad to see that there's continued support of the Mariculture Advisory Committee and those efforts. What are your thoughts on mariculture and kind of what do you see with that industry developing?
Well, it looks like it's a potential to develop a very strong leadership business. Going forward, there's some legislation in the works over here, and eventually it'll get up to finance at some point. It's pretty much supported, most all coastal legislators. I don't see a lot of pushback on it. We'll wait and see what the final bills look like. The legislation cost. So we've got to develop new industries, and we've got to keep people working. So that's one of them that's very attractive.
That's great. I have a question from Gary White, and he asks, does the governor intend to implement any of the suggestions from the Alaska Marine Highway Reshaping Group report other than just creating a new advisory board? Any chance a new governance model can be implemented as suggested by the Southeast Conference reform report?
So the document that Gary's referring to, I sat on with House Speaker. I think Admiral Bert, he chaired it. I think he brought some good suggestions forward. We had a finance committee here a week or so ago. I think we're going to use some of his recommendations. I'm certainly using them in the financial stabilization plan I'm putting together. And I delivered that down to the House. And they're going to see the first flush of that when they put their budget on the table. I think Admiral Bert had some good ideas. One of the things he cautioned about was you can't just go in and put a new governance plan in and expect the corporate culture to change and everybody stand up and salute. It's going to be several years of work and steps along the way, stabilizing their finances, having a predictable schedule out in front of them, and having reassurance that if they have a schedule out, that there's going to be ships there when those days come. People seem to be more concerned about, and rightfully so, about having stability and predictability in scheduling than having, so many particular ferry stops. They'll take less ferry stops as long as when they're there. So we'll see some of that. The governor does have a bill in. There's a couple other pieces of legislation. I prefer to have the governor's bill at finance, and then we can make adjustments to it. He makes recommendations, and he proposes and we dispose. So I would be looking at putting some of Admiral Barrett's ideas from that committee into that. I think it's several steps away to get a complete separate governance. But I think we're going to start heading that direction. Because clearly what we have doesn't work. If we don't make some changes, we're not going to have a marine highway that'll solve itself. The marine highway's been reduced in half. There isn't near as much maintenance as should be for old ships. saying that for several years, and it's getting more apparent every year. And we need to get some ships replaced. The Tuscaloosa is number one on the hit list, and we need to move forward. We continue doing what we have been doing. We don't have to worry about the Green Highway because it won't be there. So we need to make some changes.
We were able to be part of the Catlian Bay Road groundbreaking a couple summers ago. Do you know the latest update on that extension of Halibut Point Road?
Well, no, not necessarily. I haven't, visited with the contractor in quite some time. I job on the corporation side. The project is tough, hard project. The contractor's doing a very good job. I get no negative feedback on the project. So as that goes, it looks like they could probably use a little more funds to try to get it to completion, and I'll be working on that. So that project is underway and going. We'll see what it looks like when it's completely done. It's a tough project. And those that complain about the cost, I don't disagree. It's expensive, but it would have been cheaper 20 years ago. It cost more 20 years ago. So we need to build it. It's the first road extension that you can drive on in Sitka since the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little too long again. The swimming pool at Mount Edgecombe High School, I think that's getting resolved as far as I know, unless there's some, skullduggery going on that I don't know about. So that should be out of the news and just an operating facility. Okay. But we are looking at trying to structure an endowment for Mount Edgecombe High School so we can get some stability and funding to Edgecombe, and if they're releasing the properties, that money stays with the school through the endowment. We're looking at the next build-out phase of Edgecombe. It's adding classrooms or boys' dorms or what have you. Those are definitely on my target list. So when the day comes, we have a big fund package or other school projects around the state, I'm going to put on Edgecombe in play. I think the boys' dorm, the age of them, need to be replaced. There's World War II vintage, and we need to upgrade it. It would look expensive, but I can assure the community what we spend in our region of the state is pittance compared to what we spend on the rest of the state. So I just want our region to be treated fairly. We're not going to be building big bridges and big roads and all of that stuff that they need up north, big power lines and so on and so forth. And we do need things like more classrooms in Mount Edgecombe High School and more dormitories. And there may be also some demand coming from the community in response to the next several years of the surge expansion. I think they're going to have 400 or 500 workers in town and need 80, 100 plus housing units. This is a big deal for the community. I think it's going to be a project to be very, very proud of. And it will anchor surge permanently in the community. And we won't have to listen to the argument concern that Juneau's going to steal surge. We'll put them in a brand new hospital and they won't go anywhere, which is a real asset for our community. Mm-hmm. From multiple angles.
Absolutely.
Including our schools. We have a lot of highly educated health workers in our community, and we have a good producing school, and we've got money to help our schools. And it'll help our other kids with competition within the schools. Competition's good, and I think it'll help us raise our test scores. It'll bring better achievement for all our students.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I got to go in and swim at they have limited times over at the Mount Edgecombe pool, but it was wonderful, and my son, who's 8, learned how to swim. So thank you for that. I think every kid in Southeast needs to know how to swim, and this was that was a really great opportunity. I know also just the leadership that comes out of Mount Edgecombe High School for the whole state of Alaska. That investment is worthy, and I think having those students be in good housing is totally a good goal to work towards. And I think that kind of speaks to that workforce development piece of looking at the construction opportunities and jobs that are coming, and looking to build up those the skill sets of our community, so that we're able to have more local hire and keep those dollars local. I did have just one more question come in. I might have missed it, but does the capital budget, what does it look like for Sitka? Any opportunity for local projects such as a marine haul out at the Gary Paxton Industrial Park, or repairing the seawall at the Marine Service Center? Either of those be included?
I don't know on that. Probably unlikely for the new haul out. Even the seawall looks pretty big. Again, I think there's going to be a huge concentration on just for maintenance. We haven't got to the point in the process of talking about if we're going to have any monies we can move around within our community or districts. So I've got the list on my desk for the entire Senate district, and those are on there, along with some others. So, again, we haven't got that far. Senator Bishop on Fairbanks is in charge, co-chair in charge of the capital budget. And so I have lots of opportunities to have discussions with them on projects. So I'll keep all that in mind. I don't know the individual projects around the state, if they're going to be a lot of additive, other than trying to deal with the normal programs that we go through the mentioned grant fund, the water programs, school maintenance.
Yeah.
We're talking about hitting the school maintenance list really hard. So we can see, but I don't think it's probably not like, I guess. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying it looks like there's going to be other areas of concentration this year.
Yeah. Well, another thought that came to mind, if you could talk about do you have any update on the seaplane base? I know we just went through the environmental study and had some community updates on that. Do you know where that land transfer is?
I haven't been briefed on that for several weeks. My concern with the land transfer, obviously, is the money stays with the school, the Michigan school. And as far as I know, they're working that out. So I'd have to get briefed on if they have any better news than what City Hall would be more informed on that than I would be.
Sure.
But it'd be nice. I would say this, that we need to have an airplane float that functions with fuel for floating. If you look at the 40s and 50s and 60s and Sitka, they have planes flying all over the place. Mm-hmm. They have airplanes landing in Jamestown Bay. It's no big thing. There was a while, a year or so ago, we had no planes, no charter planes in town.
Yeah.
And there is a demand for it.
Yes.
We have high lakes for fishing and sightseeing and things like that. So that is an area that needs to be upgraded, and there's a definite need for it, and also increased parking at the airport. And that's another bottleneck for economic activity in the community. And we've had several meetings with DOT on that, and basically dealing with parking and expanding. It's just it's so minimal what we have over there. So we've got to get that rectified. Things like that hurt our economic base. in the community. It just makes it harder to keep people employed in our little economy.
Mhm.
So I would say the airport parking and the sea base both need to be done.
Yes. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. And we have a comment come in from Melissa Henshaw at the city. Just a special thank you to you, Senator Stedman, for all your work, and we really appreciate your update. I wish we could have had you in person and we could have been shaking hands, but the days will come back. Please let us know here in Sitka if there's anything we can do, and we just appreciate all of your advocacy for our community. Thank you.
Well,
Sure.
thank you. I have been vaccinated twice, had both shots. I encourage everybody to make your own decision. But I encourage people to get vaccinated. Don't mess around with this COVID.
Yeah.
Well, a few people that got it that hit them really hard.
Well, our latest number is 64.78% are partially vaccinated and 56% are fully vaccinated. So we're really doing awesome, and proud of our community. Thanks for that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Okay.